right, we are back. Hello, everyone. Good morning. Welcome to the Enterprise Support Monthly What's New session. So this is What's New in AWS, brought to you by AWS Enterprise Support. My name is Mark Napoli, and I'm very happy to be your guest. Now, we have a special December session here today. December is always really a feast for new releases at AWS because we have reInvent in November, and it always delivers just a plethora of new services. And this year's no different. We've got database, compute, machine learning, security across the board. There are so many new releases. We actually needed a full army today of technical account managers to come and help us talk about them. So we've got 9 guest speakers today that are going to take us through to the top of the hour. And of course, we have our 3 main hosts, Carlos, Rovan, and Mr. Platts, Matt Platts, dialing in from Queensland. How are we all? Good to see you.
Very good.
Very good.
Great to see you too.
Loving the hat. Carlos,
I didn't get the memo about the hats.
This is the most Christmassy hat I could find. Carlos, I think you're off on holidays. Is that true for next week? It's probably why you're wearing the hat. Got a bit of joyous mood happening in the Gonzalez household.
Yeah, absolutely. Going back to hometown to New York City. Wish I went to the States a little bit earlier to be there live for reInvent, but that's the next best thing, just to spend the holidays up there.
Yeah. Well, look, thank you. You're going to see a lot more from our hosts throughout the hour. So I'll drop the 3 of you off and bring in our first special guest today, which is Paul Colmer. G'day, Paul. How are you?
How's it going, Mark? Fantastic. So thanks for inviting me to the show. I'm really excited to talk you through some machine learning goodies.
Yeah. So Paul is technical account manager with the business. I think he's a TAM by day, comedian by night. Can we expect a bit of comedy today, Paul, or is it all business?
I think, we'll see how we go. You know, we get time for a little bit of maybe a sketch at the end. Who knows? We'll have to see how we go.
Time. We have so many releases to get through. But let's kick off then. So Sagemaker Canvas. I know you're a big Sagemaker fan, and when I read about this, the sort of the promise that I see here is really sort of point and click machine learning. Right. So this is I guess a service built for people that can't code and still want to access the benefits of machine learning. So is that a sort of correct understanding of what we're trying to achieve with Sagemaker Canvas?
Yeah, I think for me, this particular service from reInvent in the machine learning suite is one of my favorites because I love the services that really appeal, I guess, to our customers that maybe don't have the time to learn something new. So machine learning, as you know, is very complex. The great thing about Amazon Sagemaker Canvas is it allows customers to use a visual point and click interface to create machine learning models that allow you to make those predictions. And the great thing about it is you don't need to write any code, which for me is a real sort of game changer. There's a number of services that have been announced over the last few years. I'm so pleased to see Sagemaker now in that basket. So I'm really excited.
Yeah. Okay. So, I mean, people have been using Sagemaker for a while. Why would they want to use this particular feature then? And who might be using this particular feature?
Yeah. So as our customers know, acquiring data science knowledge can be a very lengthy and a complex process. There's a lot of knowledge that's required. The great thing about this tool is it allows business analysts mainly to be able to then create those models without any machine learning experience. And the great thing, once they've created those models, is it starts that feedback loop between themselves and the data scientists. So it means they can share their models in real time with data scientists, and data scientists can go through those models and start to tweak those models and start that feedback loop between the business case or use case definition and the final sort of machine learning outcome.
Okay, that's great. So you don't need to be a university trained data scientist now to access machine learning. That's great. Well, what about the service itself? Is it using any automation to speed up the modeling process? Is there anything it's doing differently in the back end?
Yeah. So one of the key features that the Canvas service uses, this service was introduced into SageMaker Autopilot. It's called Auto ML or Auto Machine Learning, and this technology allows the models to be created. It effectively does a series of experiments. You can run up to 250 of them in the background. It literally does these experiments, and it determines, using a scoring model, what the best model is that can be used. So that really speeds things up for the business analyst.
Okay, so you've got a business analyst working on this. Maybe they want to expand that and get a view or some insight from data scientists potentially on the, to verify the model. Is there a way that they can share that model around?
Yeah. So again, one of the great features is this integration now with Sagemaker Canvas and our integrated development environment at Sagemaker Studio. So Sagemaker Studio is designed for the data scientists, designed for developers. Because of that integration, the business analyst can now share those models through Sagemaker Studio. So that allows that feedback loop. And some of the benefits of having that feedback loop include creating models a lot faster, but also make sure that we're breaking down those silos. So for me, this is a really exciting announcement to try and break down some of those organizational silos and really make machine learning a lot more productive for companies.
Yeah. Yeah, great. I mean, I think we had about 9 ML releases this month to choose from. We had to choose 2, and both of them are sort of centered around SageMaker. So SageMaker serverless, I mean, I guess we always knew something in the serverless space would eventually make its way over to machine learning. Managing underlying infrastructure can be a challenge for lots of customers. Can you tell us a bit about serverless inference? So is this a specific part of the machine learning process that we're now applying serverless to?
Yeah, that's a great question. So yeah, the Amazon SageMaker serverless inference allows us to focus firstly on inference. So let me take a step back and just explain a little bit about what inference is to customers that may not be familiar. So in a simple machine learning lifecycle, really there are 3 key steps. There's the data ingestion and cleansing, there's the training, and then there's the inference. The training component is really around creating models using algorithms, and we might run many of those models to then determine what the optimal model is for predicting an outcome. Once we're happy with that model, we then move on to inference. We deploy that model and we use real-time data. So in our training instance, we're using training data. In our real-time instance, we're using that live data feed. And then we're also predicting for those outcomes that we're looking for. So that's sort of like the inference component of SageMaker.
Yeah, I guess that's the point of prediction is the way I've always thought about it. So that's inference. So what's the serverless aspect around this, and how far are we going with this in terms of serverless?
Yeah, and this is the exciting part for me. So again, for people that may not be familiar with serverless technologies, it means we don't need to configure or manage any infrastructure. So ideally, for apps with intermittent or unpredictable workloads, serverless automatically scales and grows as needed.
Yeah. Okay. Great. So I'm assuming it's using Lambda, Fargate potentially in the back end. And so okay, let's combine these 2 together then. So how does SageMaker serverless inference work?
Yep. So it's a bit of a mouthful, right? So it's a long service, but basically what we can do now, we can run inferencing. So we can run those real-time predictions on those models without worrying about the infrastructure. So the infrastructure might scale or grow. I use an example of a chatbot. So you might have a chatbot for a payroll processing company. It's busy for 1 week of the month. It's not busy for 3. You do that traditionally. You have to scale up for the peak. And so you're running for the 4 weeks with the increased load. With serverless, it's small when you need it and it's big when you need it, and you only pay for what you use. So you'll probably end up with some cost savings, and it's a more efficient way of doing things. And you haven't got to manage that infrastructure.
Yeah. Okay. So sort of taking the approach of doing that in the compute world, and sort of scaling for the infrastructure of the peak demand. But now you can do it with SageMaker. So there's even less to manage. That's
Absolutely
pretty cool.
Right.
Can people use this in production now? Where can customers get it?
Yep. So the most important thing when you see the words preview, it means we don't recommend it for production use, but I highly recommend it to be used for non-production, for learning, and to explore, because I expect this to go general availability in the near future. So that's really important. The other important thing as well is it is available, yes, in Sydney, and also in Tokyo in this part of the world. So that's really exciting too.
Yeah, brilliant. Okay, 2 great releases in the ML space. Paul, thank you very much. I will push you for a joke next time, but we are out of time. Appreciate you joining today, and I'm going to move on to Carlos, who's going to take it away and tell us what's happening in the world of databases. Thanks, Carlos.
Thanks, Mark. Some really interesting releases from the ML space, and I guess it's fitting that we now move to data and analytics releases because, as you know, ML isn't a long-term marriage with data, and they work well together. And with me to talk about our favorite database releases is Andrew Boyfield, who's a technical account manager out of Sydney. Thanks so much for joining, Andrew.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for having me. What a great number of releases for me to talk about. So
absolutely, let's start with RDS Custom, mate. I think I have customers that would love this particular release, and as I mentioned in the last month's stream, RDS's charm comes from its underlying heavy lifting on behalf of our customers. But sometimes there are reasons where we need a bit more of customization in the experience when it comes to agent installations or OS configs. And it seems like RDS Customs brings a solution to that.
Yeah, that's right. So talking about one of the releases from re:Invent, this is definitely a sweet new feature from RDS team. So for our audience, RDS takes the undifferentiated heavy lifting and gives you a fully managed service for the database perspective. So you've got SQL, Oracle, and a bunch of other databases. And so for majority of times, customers will opt in for that. And then there are use cases where you really need to customize everything on the database side and the OS level elements. And so what customers had to do because of that customization is they had to move to EC2. So it's either all or nothing proposition there. And so RDS Custom went in and said, okay, well, you can have the best of both worlds. Now you can have RDS power of management and optimizing and doing that heavy lift of maintenance of the database engine, but with the addition of access to the console, being able to install custom patches. And so all of a sudden the game has shifted yet again, and our customers can enjoy that additional level of flexibility. Right now, that flexibility, we're talking about things like configure file system shares. Previously not possible. Look at the D drive. Look at the audit logs, install custom patches. So that flexibility comes now with Microsoft SQL Server. So we'll put some blog posts on our comments links when you can read through this. But this is a really powerful release for customers to really gain a huge advantage, remove the heavy lift of managing the database engine, still use the power of that RDS capability that we've built up over the years and made everyone utilize it, and still have that flexibility of going in and applying the customizations that were previously not possible and only possible on EC2. So in my opinion, really, really powerful win for customers. I've already had multiple conversations with customers about this. So yeah, it's
that's
looking
awesome,
forward to
Andrew.
where this goes.
I love what you described there. So customers still get all the RDS automation, scalability, and I guess all the RDS bells and whistles, but with an opportunity to just add their own flavor mixed in for their special use cases and needs. So I guess one word to describe it for me is just awesome. And I guess we also have another fantastic release from DynamoDB this year, and I think it once again shows AWS's commitment to help our customers create as many ways as possible to cost optimize, right? So maybe tell me a bit of how the DynamoDB team really sort of just leaned into that for our customers this year.
Oh yeah, this one's amazing in my opinion. So a little bit of context. So DynamoDB is our NoSQL fully managed serverless database, right? So people can just provision it and start using it. And what customers typically do in different business cases is continue to write data to these tables, right? And what we've released is a 60% saving on the storage of those tables. So just I want to pause there. 60%. Like I know we did cost saving, right? But in Sydney alone, for example, it's from 28.5 cents down to 11 if you enable the storage class, right? So, but let's dive into where it's even more powerful. Okay, so imagine you have a use case, or our customers having these use cases where they constantly append to these tables, right? The storage grows, okay? And what naturally started happening is customers created these archival procedures for for their necessary workflows, and they put this data to S3 and continue to archive this data. And so what would happen is an application would come in, it talk to the DynamoDB table, and then for any legacy data that they would need to access, they'd need to maintain a different API, let's say S3, S3 select, anything like that, right? So now you've got this complexity, right? You have to create an archival process. You have to now create an access level process, and that's just for one application. So you can see how this pattern starts to evolve and get complex over time, right? So now what you can do is just turn on that storage table class. It's called infrequent access, right? And get 60% off.
Awesome.
Okay, drop the bike, 60% off.
Easy.
Yeah, it is that easy. So I know I'm getting excited about it. You know, in terms of getting access to that, you go to the console, you click on actions and change table class, and it's there, right? Like it's described in a blog post. Again, we'll put it into the comments. There's a little animation. You change the table class and you start getting the 60% discount.
Wow, that's like pretty straightforward. But I know you're one of the DynamoDB ninjas in AWS, and I guess I have to ask you, I guess, what are some of the top tips for our customers to best take advantage of this release?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think I've got probably 2 or 3 tips on this specific release. The first one is DynamoDB is free for the first 25 gigs. All right, so you can work on your application, continue using it, and only start thinking about this beyond 25 gigs. So that's number one, right? But it's a really good arsenal to keep, like a weapon to keep up your sleeve, because when you grow, you can make informed decisions whether or not you go further. The second one is for larger tables, really talk to your TAM, because the reality is that if the access pattern changes, right, we can do the due diligence to validate that the cost savings of that. So for the enterprise customers, there's always lots of complexity, there's always lots of nuance. So please make sure that you talk to your TAM and do the due diligence with this, because it will create a lot of benefits when you do these sorts of things, right? Because it's also a change in your organization, right? So those are my hot tips. Last but not least, in terms of the way I like to talk about these things and learn about these things is definitely blog posts. I know I've already said this, we're going to put up on the comments these blog posts. In there, what we go through is how to enable these features in detail, what to consider, and things like that. So,
fantastic.
Look, I'm excited. I've started talking to my customers already. There's a lot for them to benefit from.
Awesome stuff, Andrew. I guess thanks for that. Thanks for joining the stream. And folks, just as a reminder, feel free to drop questions in the comments for our experts. Andrew will be on after this. And now I think we'll move on to analytics. And with me, I have Partha Sahu, who is a specialist TAM based out of Sydney. Mate, there was a ton of analytic releases, some with a particular theme. What are your highlights from this year?
Hey, hello, Carlos. Yeah, absolutely. This year, reInvent, there has been a lot of announcements, specifically in the analytics area, be it Redshift serverless, EMR serverless, lake formation governed tables. There are a lot. But yeah, my favorite ones are the Redshift serverless and EMR serverless.
Awesome. Okay, let's start with Redshift serverless, because that's one of my favorites too. Just to level set for the folks on the stream, can you briefly give us a quick one-on-one on what Redshift actually is?
Sure. So Amazon Redshift is the most widely used cloud data warehouse, which uses AWS design hardware and machine learning to deliver the best price performance at any scale. And customers use it to run SQL queries, to analyze structured and semi-structured data across their data warehouse and data lakes.
Awesome. So let's go with Redshift serverless and the feature now. So I guess, can we talk about how does this uplift Redshift or overcome any challenges that our customers face today?
Yeah, sure. One of the biggest challenge was to calculate the compute resources required for a data warehouse setup, right? So with introduction of Redshift serverless capability, it's now makes it super easy to run the analytics in the cloud. Just load your data and start querying. There is no need to set up and manage the data warehouse cluster. And when it comes to billing, you pay for the duration in seconds when your data warehouse in use. For example, you are loading your data or running any query, and there is no charge when your cluster is idle.
Okay, so this really definitely brings some cost advantages for our customers. But I know I read somewhere and I found a laundry list of other benefits. Can you describe some of those?
Yeah, first of all, Amazon Redshift Serverless now automatically provisions the right compute resources for the customer to get started, right? So they don't have to worry about the initial calculation of compute resources. And as their demand evolves with more concurrent users and new workload, it will scale seamlessly and automatically to adapt to the changes. Additionally, the other biggest benefit I'll say is now when they access the data from S3 Data Lake via the Redshift Serverless endpoint, they do not have to pay for Redshift Spectrum separately. Instead, the billing method is now same as Redshift Serverless. So you have a more unified serverless experience when you are querying with Redshift Serverless.
Very nice. So I guess what profile customers should consider Redshift Serverless today? And how do they get started or even migrate to Redshift Serverless?
Yeah, Amazon Redshift Serverless is ideal when it is difficult to predict the compute needs, such as variable workloads or periodic workloads with ideal time, or even steady state workloads with uneven spikes, right? So Redshift Serverless is also good fit for ad hoc analytics need to get started and quickly for Redshift, for example, for the development or test environment. And this will also help another section of users like the developers or business analysts who do not have the expertise or maybe the time to manage a traditional full-fledged data warehouse. So they will find it super easy to start with Redshift Serverless. Just load their data and start running query. And for existing cluster, there will be various options like snapshot restore, which will be provided once it goes GA. They can migrate and start using the Redshift Serverless.
Okay. So I guess sometimes with serverless, like in a large scale, it can be a cost consideration for customers. Can you tell us how our customers can possibly incorporate controls to manage their cost and usage in Redshift Serverless?
Yeah, with Amazon Redshift Serverless now, customer pay separately for the compute and storage use. And the serverless compute capacity is now measured in RPU, which is called as Redshift Processing Units. So you pay for the workload in RPU hours with per second billing when cluster is in use. And coming to cost control, compute resources automatically shut down behind the scenes when there is no activity and resume when you start loading your data or you run any query, right? And additionally, customer can specify usage limits, for example, a daily, weekly, or monthly duration limits. And they can also define actions that Amazon Redshift automatically takes if those limits are reached. For example, sending an alert or turn off user queries or log to a system table. So they have more control how the cluster is used and till what duration they are used. So they have absolute control over the cost as well.
That's fantastic. So I guess just to close it off with Redshift Serverless, what's the availability? Can customers access Redshift Serverless today?
Yeah, so Redshift Serverless preview is already available in across 6 regions in US, Europe, and Asia Pacific, and more regions will be added when it goes public.
Awesome. So I guess we're a little bit time short here, so I just want to rapid fire through 2 other ones. Just keeping with the serverless theme, we had EMR serverless. You got any pointers for our customers on the stream?
Yeah, not only like EMR, right, but it is always a bit challenging task to right size a big data or Hadoop workload, and while still trying to meet the scalability and keeping cost under the control, right? So EMR serverless feature eliminates the need to right size cluster for different jobs and data sizes. So with now EMR serverless, it's just come down to 2 steps. You create an application using an open source framework, for example, Spark, Hive, or Presto, and submit jobs to the application. EMR serverless will automatically provision the resources as required, and you do not have to worry when the data volume changes or you add more concurrent jobs, and you only pay for the duration the resources are used by your jobs. And another biggest benefit Yeah, and just to highlight, another biggest benefit is now EMR serverless is a region service. So when you submit your job to EMR serverless application, it can run in any availability zone in the region. So in case an availability zone goes down, and when you submit a job, serverless application is automatically run in a different healthy region, healthy availability zone.
Fantastic. Those are fantastic analytics releases. I think all our customers from the analytics space are really happy. Partha, thank you so much. Now I'll hand it over to Rovin so we can talk about some of the security updates.
Yes, Carlos, appreciate it. I'd like first to welcome new joiners that I can see more customers actually watching the stream. So if you just join us, welcome to our special edition of What's New in AWS and the reInvent recap. So security, what a very timely topic. Today, I have two specialists with me, Shamandeep, our security specialist, and also Rishi, our senior TAM and security specialist as well. Hey, folks.
Hi, Rovin.
Hi, Rovin.
We actually were planning to walk you through the reInvent security announcement. But with the recent, obviously, vulnerability, Log4j, we had to shift gear a little bit and focus more on what we can do to help you mitigate this risk. So in the chat, we'll put a link to Shield Advance, WAF, Control Tower, and I'll briefly just talk about both of them. So if you haven't heard, Shield Advance now can automatically respond back to layer 7 attacks. Without any manual intervention from customers. So what a great addition. From a WAF perspective, we added Capture to stop or mitigate against all of these automated pod on things like login pages. And Control Tower as well added functionality to give customers control over where their data resides and also processed through detective and preventative policies. So, speaking of vulnerabilities and security assessments, let's start with Amazon Inspector. Sham, I know we just released the all-new Amazon Inspector during reInvent. Do you want to maybe walk our customers through the features and what benefits can they take out of it?
Yeah, certainly, Rowan. Thank you for having me today here. So Amazon Inspector has been re-architected and rebuilt to create a new vulnerability management service. So all you need to do is to enable the service by single click without any additional deployment efforts. So let's talk about some of the key features. So new Amazon Inspector automatically discover all running EC2 instances and ECR repositories. So without the need of additional agent installation, because it uses SSM agent to run the scan. And also integration with AWS Security Hub and Amazon Event Bridge allows findings to be sent downstream for visibility and remediation by automated workflow. And finally, a highly contextualized and meaningful inspector risk score is a great feature release.
Oh, interesting, Sham. So how can we use Inspector across multiple AWS accounts?
Yeah, so Amazon Inspector is integrated with AWS organizations now. So you can assign a delegated admin account for Amazon Inspector to act as the primary administrator to manage and configure inspectors centrally. So this delegated administrator account consolidates all findings and can configure all member accounts as well. It's quickly and easy. It's also important to note that the new inspector collects events from over 50 vulnerability intelligence sources, including CVE, the National Vulnerability Database, and Mitre.com.
Gotcha. What a great thing. I heard you saying the new feature about the contextual risk assessment. Can you maybe shed some light what that takes into account over the normal generic common vulnerability scoring system?
Certainly, and that's one of my favorite ones. So contextual risk assessment takes into account additional factors such as accessibility to the internet, and ease of exploitability to make the score more meaningful. So I'll take an example here. So a new CVE identified with a highly critical score, and it can only be exploited remotely. If the instance is not reachable over the internet remotely, the risk is very low. So inspector uses the network reachability aspect to identify this and rescore as appropriate for the specific environment to produce more meaningful and actionable findings.
Well, that makes sense. Yeah, cool. Well, thanks, Sham. So I guess if you work in security, you had the best week in the year this week. With the new vulnerability Log4j. Rishi, do you want to maybe walk customers through what is this vulnerability about?
Yeah, first of all, thanks for having me here. And yeah, as you mentioned, last few days have been hectic for every one of us, just to try and find out more around the Log4j vulnerability. So I'll just provide a brief background around that. So the Log4j vulnerability is a critical one found in the logging platform for Apache Log4j. It allows an attacker to perform a remote code execution on the vulnerable platform. And to be very specific, the versions between 2.0 beta 9 and 2.15.0 are affected because of this vulnerability. And this vulnerability uses the Java naming and directory interface, which is used by a Java program to find data normally through a content directory. So this is the brief around the Log4j vulnerability.
Got you. So within AWS, what type of services customer can use to kind of limit the risk of this vulnerability?
Yeah, definitely. So from the protection point of view, I would say customers can build a control layer approach to protect their resources from this vulnerability. So to start with, customers can use AWS WAF in AWS managed rules to help protect their supported services and resources from this vulnerability. So I would say specifically there is a rule set around that. Customers can leverage the AWS managed rules, known bad inputs rule set, especially the log4j RC rule, which helps to inspect the request for the presence of log4j vulnerability. And I would like to mention to our AWS WAF Classic users that they will need to migrate to AWS WAF, or they need to create custom regex match conditions to avoid this vulnerability.
Got you, got you.
Also, just before you proceed, Rowan, I want to mention that from the network point of view, network layer protection point of view, customers can also use AWS Network Firewall and import Suricata open rules in the AWS Network Firewall directly. These rules can help identify not only the scanning, but as well as the post-exploitation of the log4j vulnerability. And customers can refer to some of the public references on the available open sources Suricata rules. And this references has also been included in the AWS published blog on this log4j vulnerability. And probably we can, paste that link in the chat window also for our viewers.
Got you, got you. Maybe I will check with Sham. Sham, how do you think customers can detect this vulnerability if it exists in their environment?
Yeah, absolutely. So from detection point of view, as I've already provided an update on the latest inspector version 2 availability, and it can also help to detect the log4j issue on Linux container in ECR and on EC2 instances where customer have installed log4j via an OS level package manager on Linux. So as already mentioned, version 2 supports continuous scanning, which is a great feature release. So if any customer are using the latest version, finding will begin appearing without any manual action if the vulnerability for log4j is present in their environment. However, a quick note here about Inspector Classic users. They'll have to kick off a manual assessment to identify this particular vulnerability. So in addition to that, we've got Amazon Guard Duty, which is also, the team is also updating to indicate the compromise associated with exploiting the log4j vulnerability. And many customers today also use AWS Security Hub with Inspector and Guard Duty to aggregate all the alerts and enable automatic remediation and response.
Got you. Thanks, Sham. So between, I guess, yourself and Richie, you've shared really good information about how can we detect this vulnerability if it's in our environment. But then response mechanism is very important as well. Can you maybe shed some light? How can customers respond back to this vulnerability or find a way to mitigate it?
Absolutely, Rowan. So response mechanisms are definitely very important aspect. So we recommend that those running affected applications upgrade Log4j to version 2.16, which is the latest one, to address this vulnerability. However, sometimes it may not be a quick win. So there are a couple of ways they can approach it. Our team has released a hot patch for a running JVM as an interim mitigation step. Secondly, you can also mitigate this vulnerability by changing your Log4j configuration manually using Apache official guidance. And the final bit is really my favorite one because it involves automation. We can use AWS Systems Manager Patch Manager and have critical patches set to install immediately in your patch baseline. So it is important to note that even if you have done this, you are not finished yet. So next customer will also need to update the class path wherever the library is used in the application code to ensure the most up-to-date version is used everywhere. So we recently published a blog post to outline key AWS security services to help protect, detect, and respond against this vulnerability, and the link will be shared in the chat.
Thanks, Sham. Appreciate it. Richie, thanks a lot for the insight and all of the guidance you provided our customers today. If you are impacted with the issue, make sure we are thinking of you. Reach out to AWS support, your TAM, your SA, or account manager asking for help if you need any guidance. And please do check the blog that AWS posted publicly in the chat that will help you step by step how to mitigate and respond to this vulnerability. And with that, let me introduce Matt, who's our awesome host, gonna take us through the compute.
Thanks so much, Rovan. That was a really good discussion, especially very timely as well with Log4j. So thank you for going into a bit more detail on that. Just wanted to just do a quick welcome to some of the new streamers that have just joined us, and just a friendly reminder as well to feel free to ask some questions in chat. We've got a lot of specialists on today that would really love to dive into a bit more detail and answer some of your questions. So excited as well to introduce our guest today, Manoj. Hey Manoj, how you doing?
Hey Matt, I'm excited to be here, and I've sneaked in a special guest here as well.
Oh no, what are you doing to me?
Excited to listening to the reInvent recap this time. So I'm really excited to be here.
I've got the kids in the background too, so there's a 30% chance we might have some special guests as well joining us in the next few minutes. We will see.
That's great.
So Manoj, you're one of our senior technical account managers in Sydney, and one of our SMEs and containers and all things compute. So I'm really looking forward to picking your brain on this one. Let's jump in because I'm sure we could talk all day, and I know we're not allowed to. So yeah, look, we're always looking for ways to bring more flexible computing options into the hands of our developers. Maybe do you want to just run us through some of the new instances we've announced?
So we've actually got a new M1 Mac instance that we launched. I'm really excited for. And we've got a couple of Graviton releases as well. Like we've got the C7G, which is a compute optimized instance type, as well as the G5G, which is actually a GPU optimized instance type as well.
Yeah, that G5G is running with the NVIDIA Tensor GPU as well, isn't it? So
yeah, that's right. So it's great for if you're looking to do like ML workloads. It's perfect for that.
Yeah. Yeah, the M1 Max really stood out to me, especially following off the back of the reInvent announcement last year, where we introduced Max. Just remind me again, like what was the big problem that we were solving last year with that introduction of Max into the AWS platform?
So when we actually introduced that last year, we were just trying to make it easier for Apple developers to develop, run, and test on AWS. To sort of help them to improve their operational efficiency and, build automation and also have more of an on-demand scaling. You don't have to invest too much around building that initial infrastructure as well.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, the one to me that really stood out was just, I think we all recall having developers having Macs under their desks and someone turning it off on the weekend and then all the build pipelines failing. So it's really good.
And plus, like with this, we're actually, with the new release of M1, I'm really excited because it's going to give them 60% more better price performance compared to the just the regular x86 as well. And now we're also putting native ARM64 macOS in the hands of developers who can now develop and build and test on top of that as well.
Awesome. Yeah, and maybe just taking a bit of a step back too. I mean, I can see a bit of a theme with some of the Graviton releases. Do you want to just, I know I can just notice a bit of a footnote here just in regards to that C7G one that you mentioned. It's actually built on the new Graviton 3 architectural platform that we have. Do you want to maybe just run us through some of the benefits of Graviton 3 in relation to 2?
I know with Graviton 2 release, we already had a better price to performance ratio than any of the other chipset we had. With Graviton 3, we are looking to deliver 25% even more compute to our users. And plus, it's going to give, if you're running ML workloads, you can expect up to 3 times more performance benefit. And also, if you're looking to run crypto, it's going to give you 2x more performance.
Yeah, and before we move on from Graviton, I thought I'd just quickly mention as well, because we won't have too much time today to discuss AWS Outposts, as you can see, but we do have some new options there, 1RU and 2RU options for Outposts. And I just wanted to mention that one of those 1RU options actually includes Graviton. So if you're really looking to get a bit more of the edge computing closer to either a warehouse or closer to your customers, that's definitely an option to strongly consider. Moving on. Carpenter, that sounds pretty cool. So you had me at open source, but maybe you can run us through a bit more of some of the features and benefits of what Carpenter brings.
Look, I'm really excited for this release, not just because I'm a container specialist. But it's just that whenever I go out there, have a conversation with the customer, whenever we talk about scaling on Kubernetes or even EKS, users need to use EC2 autoscaling and the Kubernetes or cluster autoscaler to scale their workload. It works, but it is a bit challenging and restrictive to configure this, especially the Kubernetes cluster autoscaler. So that's what Carpenter is trying to make it very simple and be able to provide just-in-time capacity. So I'll just explain what that means. So how this works in the backend is Carpenter is actually going to be watching for any unscheduled pod within your Kubernetes cluster, and it's going to be able to talk directly to the EC2 API. So it's no longer have to trigger an autoscaling. So it's going to directly talk to EC2 API and be able to figure out the right size EC2 instance. I really want to highlight the right sizing here, because it's going to be able to figure out what are the unscheduled pods that's in your cluster and be able to figure out what right instance type I can choose to host, run all these pods on top of that. I think that's really cool. And also we're working on a feature where Carpenter will soon be able to automatically optimize your cluster as well. So you could be running pods across your nodes, and Carpenter will be able to sort of aggregate all of that and be able to move things around to ensure that you're getting the best using the limited footprint and also improve the cost and performance for your workload as well.
Yeah, that sounds awesome. I was just looking at one of my clusters just the other day and looking at some of the auto scaling groups and the configuration for that. So to me, I mean, there's a lot in there, but I really read it as that's a deeper integration into Kubernetes with that direct orchestration as well into the AWS platform. Just remind me, is this are we building it just for Amazon EKS? What's the how does it exist out in the broader Kubernetes community? What's the intent?
So like you highlighted before, this is an open source project. So this is licensed under Apache. So anyone can go to our GitHub page and fork this. So if you're running a self-managed Kubernetes cluster on top of AWS using EC2, you can still leverage this. You can just deploy it within your cluster. It just runs as a controller and you'll be able to do the same thing as well. But it'll just work really well with EKS.
Awesome. Well, that looks like a fun project to really follow and keep a track of over the next couple of years. So thank you so much for running into that. I think we'll be back soon to discuss storage, but that's all we have for compute today. So I think I'm bringing back Carlos now to discuss and dive a bit more detail into some of our development releases. Hey, Carlos, how you doing? I love the hat.
Hey, thank you. In the Christmas spirit, and I love that last release around Carpenter. That's a really exciting one. I'm going to move into the DevTools section, And I have the pleasure of having Matt Coles, who's a principal TAM and host of another popular AWS show, Dev in the Shed. And folks, just a reminder, we've already gone through machine learning, database and analytics, security, and compute. You can always catch the live replay of the live stream, and feel free to add any comments and questions. Our experts will jump on board after their chat and answer them. So Matt, I feel really confident when I say that the developer announcements this year certainly did not disappoint, and I guess left a lot of folks super excited, and there's so many to choose from. But let's start with CloudWatch, right? So, we know that monitoring web applications and understanding performance to provide an optimal experience for users is pretty important capability. And it seems that CloudWatch just lifted its game here with the new real user monitoring release, or otherwise known as CloudWatch Rum, which to me wins the best release name of all time in my books.
Yeah, exactly. The service team really got an amazing name, right, with that one. So very, very excited to see this capability come. Last year we had CloudWatch Synthetics, so you could kind of get closer to how front-end apps were working. But the whole vision with Rum was essentially that we could actually tell what's happening from an end user point of view. So we didn't have access to crash logs. We didn't have access to be able to see the performance and whether there are issues loading certain pages and this and that. So Rum basically allows us as developers to see exactly what's happening on an end user device, and then we can troubleshoot the application or work out where things went wrong or what broke for the user, right? So it's really, really critical feedback as a developer from my point of view, is knowing that.
That's fantastic. So I guess the question is, how can users get started with leveraging Rum?
Yeah, so you can configure it directly in the console if you want to check it out. It's actually quite easy to set up. So you go to CloudWatch, you'll see on the left-hand side a section called Rum. You'll click on that. You type in the URL of your website that you want to deploy to. You can have it sift down to subdomains as well if you want it to as well. You can choose to turn on X-ray. It uses Cognito under the hood for a user authentication, so we can have the data come through authenticated back to AWS for storage. So you'd flip on basically Cognito if you don't have it already available, or you'll set it up to kind of link to your third-party auth that you might be using. You can configure unauthenticated users in Cognito as well. That helps to bring all the data back, right? So, and that sounds more complicated than it is. It's like literally a one-click config in Rum to get that turned on. And basically, after you choose your options, you click go. It gives you a JavaScript tag, and that JavaScript tag goes into the header of your application. So all the pages will kind of inherit that header, and you can start monitoring. So it's pretty cool.
Wow, that's pretty amazing stuff, and so simple. And it goes without saying how much of an advantage it is, to bring all your application metrics into the CloudWatch ecosystem to, I guess, quickly visualize any anomalies or key metrics for your applications. Is Rum available in all regions today, or just in
So for everyone that's joined in Sydney, we've got it within Sydney, Australia region. So that's pretty cool. I saw it up here in Singapore as well. I saw it in North Virginia. I know that it's in 10 different regions at the moment, and I suspect that, right throughout this year, we'll see it scale across the rest of AWS Cloud.
Fantastic. And if you want a full list of all the regions available, just check out the AWS blog post. And just on a side note, on CloudWatch, as they also released Evidently, which deserves a mention because it assists with A/B testing, which I encourage folks to check out. And obviously with CloudWatch Rum and Evidently, they are a powerful duo. I want to move on to Amplify Studio because simplifying and accelerating that UI development with minimal fuss or code for that matter, is one of the handy aspects from this release. And with the new UI library, it means that there's an easy sync with Figma, which I think is a tool that designers use when building applications. Is pretty popular. How cool is that? And what do you think about this release, Matt?
Yeah, well, I mean, I was really, really impressed with Amplify this year, right? Like it was the keynote basically of our CTO here at Amazon. When you watch, reInvent, Amplify's allowed for a lot more in the last year, right? Like it now allows for server-side rendered apps. It allows for connecting into CDK, so you can basically use all 200 plus services. So that was another big release. But this one in particular is like super fascinating, right? Because as a backend developer, I just want to get a front end up quickly. Like now we've got a feature for that. As a front end developer, you know, like there's a lot that I need to think of outside of the actual design of the site as well. And so I think that kind of caters there too. From my point of view, like, you know, the designer will create their mock-ups in Figma. You can click through the app, you can see what it looks like visually, but now you've got a one-click import, and it's going to import all those graphics into components, and then you can connect it to data sources underneath. So you can go like, hey, you know, that's going to be the cost element. So, you know, that field that was just generic text before, it should be pulling from this particular field in Dynamo. So it's really, really powerful in the fact that you can actually, through a no-code, you know, interface, you can create React components that you can bring back into your application. And so it means less of a focus of like what to do with, you know, the design, and you can actually connect to real data sources, bring them into your app, and then work with everything else that you have to as a web developer. You know, web development, super complicated these days. React is something you could dedicate your life to.
Yeah, indeed. That's a fantastic release, and I'm sure the community of designers, front and back end developers really appreciate it. And I guess speaking of community, let's move on to the next release. And we have a pretty special announcement for the community, as we announced that both Construct Hub and the AWS CDK v2 are now generally available. So I guess, Matt, what can the community look forward to with the new CDK v2 as an uplift to v1?
Yeah, I've been really excited about v2. Version 1 of CDK was really good. We had a lot of learnings out of it. You know, as we were building CDK, and it was open source. In terms of like the way that it's kind of evolved is we've kind of moved away from having to install every single different AWS service as a separate package. So CDK v2 basically comes with all the packages pulled down centrally. You can build the infrastructure. You just need to do imports at the top of your script of like what assets you want to load in, right? So it's less, I'd say, fluffing around. You can get straight to the point. You go, okay, I need S3 here, and then I'm going to build something with Lambda over here, and you can build up, you know, like things very quickly with CDK v2. You can change the way that you write your imports when it comes to migration. So it's really easy to basically upgrade to v2 with minimal impact. You'll just, you know, match the new library names slightly, or adjust those back to, you know, what you had in your old app. So, you know, something as something. And then the other thing is the flags. So feature flags, there's a bit more smarts within v2. So you can remove a lot of the feature flags that you had where you needed the infrastructure to behave a certain way.
That's pretty awesome. And we seem to have complemented, you know, that release of v2 with CDK Construct Hub, which, you know, it looks like it should give developers a pretty straightforward pathway to collaborate, contribute, or find CDK constructs that they can leverage. And what's best is it's all open and powered by the community.
Yeah, I mean, CDK started as open source, right? Like Terraform community, you know, Terraform themselves, they have HashiCorp, they have Terraform SDK, CDK. You've also got, you know, the Kubernetes community using CDK to build infrastructure there as well. So what we've effectively done with Construct Hub is taking that like open source philosophy. We're now letting, you know, anyone develop a construct within CDK. So, you know, one of the examples that I saw given was like Datadog. Like Datadog, you can basically go in, find the construct for Datadog. It's going to set up a bunch of AWS assets at the same time. And basically, you'll just import this into what you're doing with CDK, you know, do a CDK deploy, and you've got Datadog set up with everything that you need, like in the periphery, all done. Same goes for, you know, if you've come up with a really cool pattern, you can share that back to the community through the Construct Hub as well. So it's an excellent place where you can basically share what you're building. You can tap into things that people have built. You don't have to repeat yourself. It saves time as a developer or you know, DevOps type person. So I think it's really fantastic.
I think the community really won reInvent this year with that cluster of releases. Just really quick, we also had AWS Repost discussion tool, which effectively replaces AWS Forums as well, which will prove quite useful to the community. So Matt, thank you for diving deep on those releases. I really appreciate your time. I'll now shift over to Rovin to talk a bit about networking.
Thank you, Carlos, and great to see Matt. If you haven't heard from him before, or you haven't watched his Devs and Chat, it's also on AWS Twitch on Wednesdays, I do believe. Cool. So let's talk about networking and business applications. And I do have two great SMEs here with me, Mahmoud, our senior TAM and a specialist in networking, and Nelson, our specialist TAM for Connect and End User Compute. So Nelson, there was two Connect announcements that caught my eyes at reInvent this year. One is the call summary and how Amazon Connect now can summarize customers' calls. Can you maybe shed some light here?
Yeah, sure. That is basically Amazon Connect contact lens. And basically what it is our AIML solution that was released in reInvent 2019. Back then, we did a call summarization. We didn't do, we did call transcription and sentiment analysis. In 2021, we released the real-time capabilities, and now in 2021, we are doing call summarization. Then, when you think from the contact center's point of view, all the agents at the end of the call they need to summarize what the call was about. Then they spend time putting like what was the issue that the customer called, what is the next step. That part is basically safe now. From the manager's point of view, is even a longer time, or supervisors, because they need to listen to the call or read the transcription and based on that provide a summary of the call. Then that part is now included in our CTR, that is the details about the call. And would include mainly three key components. Those are first is the issue that answers the question why the customer called. The second one is the outcome, like what was the call about. And the third one is the action item, like what is the next step for the agent to do. The good thing is we can link that component with CRM or with task that will create a work item for the agent to follow up.
Cool.
And one cool thing about it, I haven't finished yet. There is no additional charge for that. Basically, call summarization is part of the pricing of contact lens, and it works straight out of the box. Like you are doing contact lens today, you will have call summarization running.
Awesome. So it's really a great feature there to cut down the time agents do spend to summarize your call and take notes and so on. So that all now automated and can be saved in a JSON format on S3, even if you want to go back to records before, and free as well of charge. So that's really great. So Nelson, have we changed the interface by any chance? So I've logged in and found completely new look. Can you walk us through it?
Yes. Yeah, it's super exciting. Now we have the unified agent application that basically will include the CCP, that was our previous interface. It will include all the different services or capabilities that we have released in the last year or so. We will include the voice ID that customer will be able to authenticate using their voice. It will include multiple contacts. You can manage basically all the multiple contacts. You can manage chats or tasks and calls, obviously. They will have customer profiles in the middle. Then customer profiles will have a single profile for the customer and will integrate with the CRMs or with ITSM system in the background, like Salesforce or in a ServiceNow. And we will have wisdom in the right of the application that will basically deliver the IML capabilities to give to the agent like a knowledge articles about what is happening in the call, helping the agent with information, getting the right information at the right time.
Awesome. I really like the Western part though, because it does help agent bring the relevant internal articles to help them answer custom questions. So could it be better, I guess? Moving to workspaces. And
Hey, but hold on. You are the expert in Amazon Workspaces. You were my mentor. Then, Rovan, there was a new release called Workspaces Web. Can you tell us more about it?
absolutely. So I guess we start to see a trend going up for web-based application. And customers been asking us, how can we simplify in a secure manner access to their employees to these web-based applications? So Amazon Workspaces Web is practically simplifying customers, how can they provide access to their employees, maybe into internal intranet or to a fast web page. without the kind of burden of managing any appliances or download application agents or software on any devices.
Great. And what happened with the corporate data? Where it resides?
Yeah, so with corporate data, practically it never reside on the user device with Workspace as well. So what happened once the user establishes a session, we create a container, an isolated environment in AWS, and render the web page in that isolated container. The user only gets the pixels out of it. So practically, this isolated environment safeguards the data from could be a compromised client machine or even attacked packages that attach to the web page. So it couldn't be better. And I guess with that, let's move to the networking. Mahmoud, being a network admin before, I used to have this Excel sheet to manage all of IP addresses and see who's taking them, who's releasing them, moving to AWS. I was still having the Excel sheet to manage the IPs across accounts and VPCs. Do you have something to kill this pain?
Yeah, sure, Reverend. Well, I got good news for you. You don't have to do this anymore, right? Now, with the announcement of IPAM, you no longer have to manage your IPs in a spreadsheet. So what IPAM offers is a way for you to automate IP address assignment. So now application teams and dev teams don't have to reach out to the network admin to get an address space, right? You can just interact with the IPAM service directly, get an IP address pool. You can monitor that pool for yourself as well, and take actions as you need, right? So I mentioned that you could monitor IP addresses. So this includes checking if you have overlapping IP addresses between VPCs, because as you know, when you try to connect two VPCs together and there's overlapping IP addresses, you have to think about other solutions, right? You have to think about natting solution, and it really complicates things. It can get very tedious, right? And it also does IP address exhaustion monitoring. So let's say you're reaching a specific a threshold, you can get notified and alarmed and act accordingly in advance. So that's pretty exciting stuff. And last but not least is you can have a history of your IP assignment. It's like for auditing purposes. So you could see where your IP addresses have been assigned to, which resources they've been assigned to, and you could do compliance on top of that as well. So this is very exciting stuff.
You actually got me quite excited when I heard we can monitor exhaustion of IP addresses. So we're not going to hear about Lambda exhausted all of the IPs in a VPC and it's time to create a new server and stuff. Amazing.
Yes.
But how customers can take benefit of or deploy the IPAM in their environment?
Sure. So the majority of the customers already have infrastructure in place and they have VPCs already set up, right? So what you can do is you create the IPAM, and from there, what happens, you have to choose the operating regions where you want to start monitoring your IPs and managing your IPs. Once that's done, IPAM will automatically discover your VPCs and backfill them into pools that you can monitor and do all the things that I mentioned a bit earlier, right? So the current workflow for customers is normally to create your VPCs and then you monitor from there. But going forward, you could actually change your workflow to create the VPCs and assign the IPs through the IPAM, right? So this is a good transition for customers to leverage IPAM and put that part of their workflow end to end.
Easy as. Awesome. So moving to the second amazing announcement in the networking space, Data Connect Site-Link. So apparently we can now route traffic directly between Data Connect locations.
Yes, correct. So for context, we have over 100 Direct Connect locations worldwide, right? So what SiteLink gives you the ability to do is create a full mesh of your connectivity between your Direct Connect locations globally, worldwide. And what this means is you don't have to route directly to the region in order to reach your other Direct Connect locations. You can bypass the region altogether, hence improving your performance and improving latency as well. And that's all by click of a checkbox, right? And by doing so, you've enabled SiteLink and you've enabled this feature. It's pretty exciting.
Mahmoud, how does SiteLink relate to AWS Cloud One? Sounds pretty similar.
Sure. So this is another exciting announcement. So I wish I had more time to talk about Cloud WAN. The way I like to think about it is Cloud WAN is really for your network constructs and your networking within the region and between regions as well, right? So you can do network policies, traffic segmentation, and things like that to address your routing needs within a region and between regions. SiteLink is actually not towards the region, or it's not region construct. It's really between your direct connect locations, bypassing the region altogether. So to recap, Cloud WAN is for region and inter-region, and SiteLink is between the direct connect locations. And we expect customers to use both of these architectural patterns in their infrastructure, right? It's not one or the other. You could actually leverage both of them. So that's pretty exciting.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mahmoud. That's quite exciting news to all of the network admins out there. Appreciate your time, and by that, we'll bring our awesome Matt Platt to take us through the storage.
Thanks so much, Rovan. Conscious of time, so we're going to jump in pretty quickly. Welcome back, Manoush.
Back for storage.
Yeah, and before we jump on storage, I just wanted to have a quick mention. There was a few questions coming into chat just around some of the Mac instances as well. So yeah, no, definitely. As today, we've got Mac 1, which runs on Metal, and Mac 2 instances, which runs on Metal. Mac 2 being the new M1 instances that we're releasing. So yeah, no, it's a great suggestion in regards to when are we going to be looking to potentially decouple some of the underlying hardware. So if you do have an account team that you do work with, maybe you have an SA, or if you're an enterprise support customer, please reach out to your TAM as well, and they can give you effectively a bit more insight on what's happening in there. Let's jump into storage, Manoj. So I think we've got a bit of everything for everyone today in regards to storage. We've got some block, we've got file, and object as well.
Let
me start off with
tree spectrum. Yeah,
that's right. EBS snapshot archiving. What's happening there? What did we just release?
So we've just released a new tier for EBS snapshot. So this is actually going to be a lot more in terms of cost, 75% saving compared to a standard EBS snapshot. So this is going to be a full archive. So every time you do this, it's going to be a full snapshot compared to the sort of incremental snapshot that you're used to with the standard snapshots.
Yeah, and just kind of hearing that like just reminds me that it sounds like a perfect use case for potentially performing an application snapshot, prior to production release, or maybe even doing one at the end of a project, for example, and then knowing that you've got that kind of parked away in the most cost-effective solution possible.
Yeah, exactly. It's true.
Awesome. What about recycling bin? That's a new one.
So we've got another one for EBS that is. How many times have we been so afraid to delete a snapshot? I mean, I've done that in the past. I've been guilty of that. I've been like, I was afraid that if I could accidentally delete something that I won't be able to recover. But with this new feature, the customers can actually add control over this. So they can actually recover it if they were accidentally deleted a snapshot as well.
Yeah, when I was looking into it, I was really excited because I know some customers have some bespoke scripts which they do something very similar with tags, for example. But to me, it really just screams around giving your customers a bit more kind of control over that deletion model, right? So initially, you can look at a delete going to the recycling bin, and then having some kind of fleet policy or a wider policy that applies. That goes behind the scenes, and after a certain set of days goes ahead and cleans up those volumes, which just give you that little bit of extra time as well. EFS replication, so jumping over to file. I love this one, but do you want to run the team through what we've just recently released?
So with EFS replication, so I know everyone's familiar with S3 replication across cross-region replication. So it's a very similar feature, but it's for EFS storage. Now you'll be able to replicate your data across multiple regions.
Yeah. This one really stands out to me, right? Like we've all seen a lot of the architectures, and many that everyone is running today, right, around having a critical file service component. And now this really allows us, especially with that Melbourne region coming online shortly, to really look at, okay, what is the total availability and RPOs for those applications, and really baking that in when it comes to data resiliency as well. So really good stuff there. Conscious of time, so let's maybe just jump into the new storage class we've just released, S3 Glacier Instant Retrieval. What's happening behind the scenes there?
So this is another archive storage class that we're releasing with S3. It's going to give you the lowest cost storage for a long living data. But if you have a requirement that this data when it needs to be retrieved, it needs to be retrieved within milliseconds. This is the best storage for you. And it's going to offer you 60% cheaper compared to the S3, infrequent access tier as well.
So it's really Glacier, but instant retrieval, without that delay.
Yeah, exactly.
So do you want to run us through maybe where you see which industries might be adopting this new storage class?
So if I think top of my head, I think the first thing that pops up to me is sort of, I can think about like a health industry, like how many times, there's patient records, for instance, you've got scans, high resolution scans and things like that, that's put in the S3 bucket. But a lot of the time, the medical practitioners, when they actually need that, they need it to be retrieved right away. This could be life or death, or even like in a normal case where usually medical practitioner only have like 10-minute appointment window with the patient. So in that case, for them, this needs to be there right then and now to support their customers, to help their patients. So I think that's where this is going to be a great use case. So I'm pretty sure there are other areas our customers can put this into use as well.
Yeah, that's a really applicable example, because I haven't been to the doctor in a few years now, but I had to call up just the other day, and I got an appointment tomorrow morning. So that's a pretty good example of not engaging and then needing to suddenly kind of get that information in front of the right people. All right, I think that's it for our key announcements across all of our different areas and domains today. Would love to welcome back Mark and the rest of the team to close.
Thanks, Matt. Yeah, we are over the hour, 1 hour and 11 minutes. Thank you, everyone. Sorry we went over time. I mean, we have hundreds of service teams that are crafting these releases, and there's just so much ground to cover. But we really wanted to try and compress it, give you some entertaining content, and help you sort of wrap your arms around all of the releases leading into Christmas. Firstly, just a few thank yous before we drop off to our producer, Alex. Thanks for moderating the chat. Thanks for making sure we stayed on time and organized. Appreciate you keeping us honest. And to the three hosts today, there's a bit of a job diving into all of these releases and really sort of plucking out the ones which you thought were key releases. So thanks for doing that. And then, of course, to the guests. We had 9 TAMs today, TAMs and STAMs. The STAM is a specialist TAM role. This is new in enterprise support. We realize that we have 200 plus services now, and we just can't go deep in all of them. When I first started, there were only 30 services, so I got a bit of a free pass. But today, the STAMs are a really important part of our organization. And then lastly, to everyone that clocked in to listen to us, I really appreciate it. If you are an enterprise support customer, reach out to your TAM if you have an ask on any of these releases, and maybe they'll put you in touch with one of the experts that you heard today. And if you're an existing AWS customer, you haven't heard about enterprise support or want to find out more, then you can ask your account manager or your account rep. So we're going to take a break in January. We will be back in February with 2 months full of releases. So any last words, guys, before we log off?
Just Merry Christmas, and have a good break to all our customers. Yeah, well-deserved break for everyone after this year, I think. Thank you all. That's AWS What's New by Enterprise Support, December edition. We will see you soon.